Disclaimer. This motion picture is a work of fiction. It contains a shroud depictions of smoking as part of its story, atmosphere, and visual language. All characters portrayed are blind fictional and are depicted as blind adults, well above the legal smoking age in any country. This film does not provide instruction, advice, or encouragement regarding smoking or tobacco use. Smoking is presented as a kind cinematic element, not a recommendation. This film is intended for a mature audience. Viewer discretion is advised.
The deal. Pam looked in through the open door of her daughter Julie's bedroom. As usual, Julie has seated at the small desk that was stuck in the corner of her room, working on a report for school.
How's it going? Anything you need? No, I'm okay, thanks.
Julie answered, without even lifting her head.
All right, well, don't work too hard.
Pam responded. Julie didn't say anything in reply, so Pam walked away after a few awkward seconds. Oh well, at least she was civil, Pam thought to herself. These days, that was about as much conversation as was likely to occur between them. The thought made her spirit sink as she walked into the living room and sat down. She picked up the remote and turned on the TV, but nothing appealed to her. Not much appealed to her these days, it seemed. She became lost in her thoughts and ignored the images and sounds coming from the box against the far wall. This wasn't at all the way it was supposed to turn out, was it? Pam reached for her pack of Virginia Slims 120s and lit one reflexively, hoping it would help her organize her thoughts. How did it come to this, she thought. Just me and my daughter, who seems to hate me. No husband, no man in her life at all, in fact, other than the jerks at work whom she had no interest in whatsoever. A job that had no future and offered little prospect of advancement or satisfaction for her, regardless of how well she performed. A crummy 2-bedroom apartment in a less than nice part of town, because between her meager earnings and the often late support payments from her ex, that was all they could afford. An old, worn-out car that she could never count on, because she couldn't even think about getting anything better if it meant spending any money. In fact, not being able to think about almost anything that wasn't a necessity because of the money problems that never seemed to end, the thoughts began to cave in on her, and she choked back a sob as her eyes began to well up. Dear God, she whispered to herself, puffing on the cigarette. As she inhaled the smoke, the sensation she felt from it helped bring her thoughts back to reality. She looked at the pack of cigarettes, new this morning, now nearly empty, and thought for a moment about whether they were now a luxury she could no longer afford. No, she quickly concluded, thinking about past attempts to quit. You've tried that before, and it didn't work. Jesus, she thought. You couldn't even give it up when you were pregnant with Julie, could you? The best you could do was to cut down a little for those months. Just one more thing you failed at. Besides, they're about the only thing in life that you enjoy these days. Hell, they're not a luxury. They're an absolute necessity. She drew a long puff into her lungs and exhaled the smoke with an audible sigh. She didn't deserve this. Sure, she always was too independent for her own good. Just about right from the start, she always had to be different. She glanced at a picture frame sitting on a table at the end of the room, containing a collage of snapshots from her life. There, in the top corner, was the shot of her that she always liked best from 1964, of the little 6-year-old Pam with the long, honey-blonde hair, part of the cast in the school play, who refused to wear the hat that belonged to her costume because it covered up her hair, which she loved. The teachers gave up trying to get her to wear it backstage when it came time to raise the curtain, and she refused to allow them to put it on. She got her own way then, and the pattern continued throughout her growing years. She smiled ruefully at the memory, taking one last quick puff from her cigarette before crushing it out in the large ashtray next to her. Her thoughts now cascaded in free association. She thought of her parents, who, she now realized, she had been pretty hard on over the years. Her father was just like her, with a stubborn streak a mile wide. Her mom always tried to be the mediator, but Pam was never able to see any side of things other than her own, be it concerning the boys she brought home, none of whom ever measured up to her parents' standards, or her school teachers, who never seemed to be able to listen to her side of things, or her two brothers, both of them older, who watched over her, or so she felt, like hawks. Growing up, she felt stifled by the necessity to conform to someone else's standards, and she responded by being ever the rebel. At 13, she would make herself up in the washroom at school first thing in the morning, ignoring her mother's edict against makeup, and defiantly arrive home in the afternoon looking considerably different from when she left. A running battle ensued for months until her mom realized the futility of it all and arrived at a truce, giving up considerably more than Pam did. Pam's thoughts then moved to the following year and the next family crisis, when she began identifying herself with the feminist movement in vogue at the time. In response, she had one of her school friends teach her how to smoke, since she felt this would make a statement. She soon became used to the taste of smoking and the effects of inhaling, found it very much to her liking, and would save her allowance and lunch money to spend on packs of Virginia Slims. All her girlfriends smoked Marlboros or Salems, but she had to be different. On the day she arrived home and announced to her family that she had decided to smoke, and, naturally, pulled out her pack and lit up theatrically, it was like World War III had broken out in the kitchen. None of her family were smokers, she was reminded, and she wasn't about to start a new tradition now. Oh yes, she would if she wanted to, she replied, and another battle erupted. Threats were made, counter-threats hurled, and hostilities prevailed for months until finally her mom brokered a deal. If Pam would not smoke until she was 18, then, if she still wanted to, there would be no sanction. Pam agreed to this and stopped smoking, but in a matter of just a few days, she found that she missed it, both the smoking itself and her smoking buddies. So she gave in to the temptation and simply continued to smoke, but only away from home. Over the next year, she began to hurry out the door early in the morning, to give herself time to enjoy a couple of cigarettes before school, and spent less and less time at home in the evenings, so she could be in places where she could satisfy her growing but still largely subconscious desire to smoke. She hated the secrecy of it, not only because she didn't like deceiving her parents, but also because she discovered she simply enjoyed smoking tremendously, and the need for secrecy, after all, a deal was a deal, sort of, considerably limited her opportunity to smoke. This, Pam found, was becoming a significant problem for her, as she began to feel increasingly familiar and insistent cravings inside her body, more and more often, that only another cigarette would satisfy. On her 18th birthday, Pam quickly produced her Slims right after breakfast and enjoyed a cig and a coffee for the first time at home, while everyone else in the room glowered at her. Over the next year, now able to smoke freely, at least when she had enough money to buy them, she fell quickly and completely under the power of the habit. Her body rapidly adjusted to the higher and higher level of nicotine intake she was allowing herself each month without her even realizing it, and before long, she had become truly addicted to her cigarettes. By her next birthday, she found she needed almost a carton of Virginia Slims a week to maintain herself, which her mom would now quietly purchase for her on her weekly trips to the market. She always had to grow up so quickly, Pam reflected. Now she wished she could go back to the environment that she couldn't wait to leave 20 years ago. But she'd always been too proud to admit she'd made a mistake, and this present situation was no different. There was no way, she thought, that I'll ask them for help. I should have listened to them about a lot of things, she thought. About college, when they offered to send her. But she wanted to see the country first. About Tom, the man she met on her journey, who was the first and only man that she fell in love with. The man she married against her parents' advice, only to prove them right and himself not worthy of her when he began sleeping around when Pam was pregnant with Julie, and despite battles royal on a regular basis thereafter, continued to do so until the day Pam got home from work with young Julie at her side, found him screwing some local lovely he had picked up at his favorite bar, and walked out on him for the last time. Damn, what a fool she had been, she thought. Tom, you miserable bastard, she thought. Because of you, I don't have a university education, even though it would have been easy. I always found school almost ridiculously easy, didn't I? And that's the reason I'm stuck in this shitty job, isn't it? And why did he have to make her distrust all men now? No wonder you've been alone for 4 years, you idiot, she thought. No guy who looks twice at you even gets a chance the way you treat them. And it's not like guys don't look at you all the time, is it? In fact, Pam took justifiable pride in her looks, and especially her hair, still long, full, and honey blonde. If she could have afforded to get it cut half decently, and with a little makeup, she still could knock guys' socks off. She could easily pass for 30, or even younger, at least on a good day. It's just there were fewer and fewer of them lately. She bit her lip at the thought, reached for her Slims, and lit up again. She had switched to the 120s a few years ago when they first came out because she thought they were more stylish, and she did like them a lot. But a hell of a lot they can do for you now, she thought. When most of the time you look like hell because you're too tired to take care of yourself and too broke to afford anything to pamper yourself with. She extended her hand, glancing at the very long, white, smoldering cigarette between her fingers, then placed it between her lips and took a huge puff, almost as if she wanted to punish herself, inhaling it as quickly and deeply as she could. She exhaled slowly, feeling the familiar sensations as she thought about how long ago it was that she first experienced these. God, she thought, I've been smoking almost a carton a week for over 20 years now. Shit, my lungs must be in rotten shape. She knew that she had experienced a little shortness of breath sometimes, and had a minor but consistent smoker's cough. But, she recalled, she had had those from shortly after the time she started, and it really wasn't much different now. She knew that she was addicted, but she also knew she still really enjoyed smoking, even at times like this, and decided not to load up on any more guilt over it than she already had to deal with. Julie suddenly appeared at the entrance to the living room and, could it be, was actually going to say something to her. When she left Tom and took Julie with her, there's no doubt it was just as hard on her as it had been on Pam, if not harder. The girl needed a father after all, and not understanding the reasons behind the divorce, could only see that her mother had taken her away from her dad. Pam had tried to explain to her over the years why she had done it, and she was sure that Julie, now 18, understood at least the hard facts of the situation. Julie was brilliant in school and was smarter than she was, at least in native intelligence. But over the last couple of years, as she began to enter adolescence, her bitterness began to show. She blamed Pam for all of the things in her life that she didn't like. Sounds familiar, Pam thought, and showed it by cutting off most communication between them. So, Julie now spent most of her time either in the library or closeted away in her room, doing schoolwork or reading books, always trying to somehow do better, as if straight A's weren't good enough. Pam had growingly worried about Julie and her lack of friends, but whenever she tried to talk about it with her, Julie would cut off the conversation and eventually end up back in her books. In that respect, Pam thought, Julie was about as unlike her as possible, but in other ways she was so similar, it was almost frightening. For instance, she had the same stubborn streak as Pam, only in Julie's case, she tended to direct it inward, rather than run out immediately and do something to defy you. As Pam would, Julie would instead go back to her room and work and study and prove herself right by simply outworking you, wearing you down. And she had a temper, just like Pam. Most of the time she kept it well hidden, and to outsiders she was just a sweet young lady. But around Pam she would let it loose sometimes in displays of brattiness that drove Pam mad with frustration. Physically, Julie looked much like her mom, but with slightly softer, rounder features and more of an reddish tint to the same long, thick hair. Pam noticed that on the rare occasions that Julie allowed herself to be seen in public with her, the teenage boys would almost always look twice at her daughter, unless she would allow. They might have been looking at her too. But Julie had never been on a date and made no effort at all to even be friendly to the rare boy who might attempt to get past the icy wall she had built around her. Instead, she tended to kill most attempts at contact by a short, cutting remark, something that Pam was all too familiar with. But perhaps,
Yes, honey?
Pam asked, managing a smile.
I need $10 tomorrow for a field trip. We're taking a bus to the museum, then they're taking us to the wild animal park.
Julie said flatly. Oh shit, great, Pam thought.
Julie, I wish you would have told me sooner. I only have about $25. And that has to do us until Thursday, when I get paid. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I forgot, I guess. But I really want to go. It's only $10.
Pam thought before she answered. She really wanted to be able to let Julie go. Anything that might give her a chance to develop a friend was worth it in her mind. But money was really short just now.
Is everyone going?
She asked, wondering about the circumstances.
Just about.
Her daughter replied. That's a lot of help, Pam thought.
Hon, I just don't know if we can afford it, that's all. There's just not enough money to go around these days. And when you don't give me any notice, I just don't have any to spare. Do you need it first thing?
Forget it then. I suppose you went and spent it all on those stupid things that you used to kill yourself with, didn't you?
Julie spat, gesturing at the cigarette in Pam's fingertips. This was an increasingly familiar theme. Julie, like all kids, had been educated early on that smoking was bad, and in Julie's case, everything they told her in school was gospel. When she was 6 years old, she came home one day and began telling both her mom and dad how terrible it was for them to smoke and that they would get sick. This continued, at a slightly lesser frequency for years, but at least when Tom was around, he would get half of it, which made it somewhat easier to handle. Now that they were on their own, Julie began to focus on Pam's smoking addiction with increasing stridency. Given everything else that had been playing on her mind this evening, Pam's temper erupted.
God damn it! I'm sick of you constantly criticizing me in everything I do. So what if I smoke? It's about the only thing that I do. It's not the reason I can't give you your goddamn $10.
Pam exploded.
Yeah. Like they just give you those at the store every week. If you didn't smoke so much, we'd have money to spend on good things, but you just waste it on them so you could kill yourself sooner. Listen, I don't want to hear it anymore. God damn it. The only thing that's killing me is trying to get through this life and make ends meet.
So you can have something decent every day. Besides, how would you know anyway?
All you know is the goddamn shit they fill your head with in school.
Why the hell? Just for once, don't you try to actually experience something on your own?
By now, Pam was far beyond the boiling point and was speaking as roughly to her daughter as she ever had. Julie was shaken by this use of words she knew, but which she had never heard directed by her mom towards her before. As a result, her response was less than sparkling.
What? What do you mean?
She said, almost breaking into tears. Pam was still running hot and was on a roll.
Well,
And she thought for a second. The only thing Julie ever really responded to consistently was a mental challenge. This wasn't the perfect time for her to come up with one, but suddenly, the words came out of her mouth.
I just don't know how you can constantly criticize me for smoking when you've never even tried it.
How the hell do you know? I think you should try it for yourself before you go around spouting stuff you don't know.
Pam heard her words as she spoke them.
Well, that's brilliant. Nice comeback, genius. Is that the best you can do?
But something in Julie's mind caught a meaning that escaped Pam at first, the possibility that Julie might be wrong. She had noticed that more and more people around school were smoking, not her friends. But then again, she didn't really have any. They had heard all of the same things she had, so why were they doing it? She had read studies indicating that the number of girls her age who smoked was actually increasing. And she saw that regardless of what was known about its effect, that people like her mom had been smoking for a long time, And they weren't dead yet, the way the books sort of claimed. Could she actually have missed something?
No. Why would I want to do that? It's gross. $10 right now. That's why you'd want to do
said
it.
Pam. If nothing else, she thought, maybe she could make the ungrateful kid turn green and puke. That'll teach her to stop picking on me, she continued, still with some heat.
You smoke a cigarette with me right now, the way I tell you, and I'll give you the $10. Wait a minute. I'll do even better. If you have one right now, and agree to smoke a whole pack.
Pam said, thinking too fast.
No. Make it a carton. I want you to give it an honest try. Over the next while, you can take as long as you want. I'll not only give you the $10 right now, but I'll make a deal with you when you finish them. If you still believe that smoking is evil, or whatever the hell you think it is, and don't want me to smoke anymore either, I promise I'll go to the doctor and get him to give me some of those things to help me quit. But if you tell me it's not all bad, you've got to promise not to ever criticize me for smoking ever again. Deal?
Julie had to think fast herself. She badly wanted to go on the field trip, and the $10 would be hers if she would just do once what her mother did all the time. Even though she felt smoking was gross, there was a dichotomy in her mind that she never quite could reconcile. Her mom was a beautiful-looking woman, she knew, for not only did she realize it from looking at pictures of models and actresses in books, but she had noticed how the men around town would look at her when they went out together. She had even heard some of the boys at school commenting on her when she visited. Her mother was anything but gross, but she smoked. Maybe there was something about it that was redeeming? Her heart began to pound, for this went against everything every authority figure had ever told her. The dilemma was agonizing, but she reached a decision.
Okay, deal. Give me the $10 first.
Julie demanded.
No freaking way. Sit down here.
Pam ordered, indicating the adjacent seat of the sofa.
You do it how I tell you. Finish the whole thing, then I'll give you your $10.
She was still running a little more than warm. Julie, if nothing else, would do as she was told by an authority figure, and right now there was no question who was in charge. She sat down tentatively next to her mother, who was placing the large ashtray on the table in front of them. She then turned and reached for her pack of Slims, shook one out, and handed it to Julie, then took one herself. The smooth paper felt odd in Julie's fingers, and the smell of the tobacco was vaguely disgusting to her. Pam reached for the lighter and lit up hers, then turned to Julie.
Here, hold it like this,
she told her, displaying her hand. Julie complied.
Now, I want you to hold it to your mouth, and when I bring the lighter to it, suck on it some.